Shark Tank has been on ABC since 2009. It is currently in its 17th season. It has aired over 360 episodes. It has generated over $11 billion in retail sales from companies that appeared on it. And the entire thing started as a Japanese game show called Money Tigers. Not a metaphor. That's the actual name. And Sony Pictures owns the format. Which means every time a version of this show airs anywhere on Earth, Sony gets paid. There are over 50 versions of it running in different countries right now. That's not a TV show. That's a franchise. Let's go back to the beginning. Japan. Nippon TV and Sony Pictures Television launch a show called Main no Tora. Money Tigers. Entrepreneurs walk into a room, pitch their businesses to a panel of wealthy investors, and either walk out with a deal or don't. That's it. That's the whole format. Simple enough that it works in basically any country with a functioning economy. By 2005, the UK had licensed it and called it Dragon's Den. By 2009, Sony and Mark Burnett, the guy behind Survivor and The Apprentice, decided to bring it to America. They pitched it to every major network. Every network said no. ABC eventually said fine, we'll give you 7 episodes, see what happens. Mark Burnett changed one thing when he brought it over. He said Dragon's Den would never work in America. American viewers didn't know what a dragon was in the context of business. But they knew what a shark was. Sharks are predators. Sharks take things. Sharks don't apologize for it. That rebrand is a bigger deal than it sounds. Because the name tells you exactly what you're watching before you've seen a single frame. So the show premieres in August 2009. For context on the timing, the 2008 financial crisis had just happened. Lehman Brothers had collapsed. People had lost their jobs, their savings, their homes. Trust in large corporations and Wall Street was at an all-time low. And into that specific cultural moment, ABC drops a show about scrappy individual entrepreneurs who have a dream and just need someone to believe in them. The timing was not an accident. Burnett literally said publicly that he designed the show to get Americans interested in small businesses after they lost faith in huge corporations. It was a product built for the exact emotional needs of its market at that exact moment. That's just good product market fit. The show grew slowly. Season 1 did okay. Season 2 did better. By Season 3 it was starting to find its audience. By Season 5 it was one of the most watched shows on Friday night television. Which is a sentence that should not make sense because Friday night TV is notoriously where shows go to die. Nobody watches TV on Friday nights. Except people watched Shark Tank on Friday nights. And the reason is the same reason it worked in Japan, the UK, Canada, Australia, and everywhere else. You don't have to know anything about business to understand it. Person has idea. Person needs money. Rich people either give them money or don't. The stakes are real. The drama is real. The math is right there on screen. It's the most accessible form of financial literacy content that has ever existed. And it wrapped it in the format of a competition show. Now here's where the business model of the show itself gets interesting. Because Shark Tank isn't just a TV show that's also good for business. It is itself one of the most cleverly monetized media products in television history. Starting from Season 1, every entrepreneur who agreed to appear on the show had to sign a contract. Buried in that contract was a clause. Whether you got a deal or not, whether a shark invested in you or not, the production company, Finmax, could take either 5% equity in your company or 2% of your operating profits. In perpetuity. Just for being on television. Think about what that means. If you turned down every shark and walked out with nothing, you still potentially owed the production company a piece of your business. The exposure was the fee. The show was collecting equity stakes in hundreds of companies a year. Some of those companies were worth nothing. Some of them became very worth something. And they had a piece of all of them just for letting them stand in front of a camera. This ran for 4 seasons before anyone outside the show really knew about it. And then a New York Times reporter found the contract and published it in 2013. The internet had a lot of feelings about this. Mark Cuban, who by that point had become the most popular shark on the show, went on Facebook and basically said he wasn't coming back if the clause stayed. He called it predatory. He said it was scaring away the best entrepreneurs. Savvy founders weren't going to give up automatic equity just for a TV appearance, especially when there was no guarantee of a deal. The producers removed the clause retroactively, meaning every company from every season was released from it. Which is a pretty significant thing to give up, considering how many businesses had appeared on the show and how many of them had grown substantially. But Cuban was the main character of the show at that point. And losing him would have cost more than the equity clause was worth. So they let it go. Even without the equity clause, the financial infrastructure of this show is genuinely layered. The sharks invest their own money. That part is real. When Kevin O'Leary writes a check on camera, it's his actual money. But the handshake you see on TV is not a done deal. What happens after filming is a due diligence process that can take months. The Sharks teams go through the actual financials. They verify the numbers. They check whether the founder told the truth about revenue, about margins, about debt. And according to multiple analyses, roughly 45 to 50% of on-screen deals never actually close. Mark Cuban said on a podcast in 2025 that around 30 to 40% of the entrepreneurs who made deals with him were, in his words, full of it, not like lying about big things necessarily. Just that the widget cost $10 to make, not $1. Or they had credit card debt they didn't mention. Or the $1 million in sales was actually 6 units. The handshake is theater. The deal happens in a conference room weeks later. Or it doesn't. And then there's the Shark Tank effect. Which is actually the most powerful thing the show produces, and it has nothing to do with the investment. When an episode airs, the company in it gets a traffic spike unlike almost anything else in consumer media. Orders flood in overnight. Social media lights up. Google searches spike. Retailers call. It doesn't matter if the shark said no, it doesn't matter if the deal fell apart in due diligence. The appearance itself is worth millions of dollars in free advertising. Jamie Siminoff pitched a product called Doorbot in 2013. No shark invested. He walked away with nothing. He renamed the company Ring. Amazon bought it in 2018 for over $1 billion. He came back as a guest shark in season 10. The show that passed on him became part of his origin story. That's the Shark Tank effect working in both directions. By the time you're watching someone pitch on Shark Tank, they have already survived an application process that rejects the vast majority of applicants. There are open casting calls across the country. There are producer outreach programs where the show actively scouts companies at trade shows and industry events. There are eligibility requirements, background checks, and multiple rounds of auditions before anyone gets near the tank. The average season films around 150 pitches. About 80 to 100 make it to air. The editors cut everything that isn't drama. The financial details that would actually be useful to a real investor get removed because they're boring on television. What's left is the story. The person crying about their mom. The founder who mortgaged their house. The couple who bet everything on the idea. That's what gets airtime. Because Shark Tank is not actually an investing show. It's a storytelling show that uses investing as the mechanism. The product being sold to you is not the entrepreneur's business. It's the dream that you could do this too. And that dream has been worth a lot of money. $11 billion in retail sales from companies that appeared on it. Over $220 million in investment pledged by the Sharks across 16 seasons. 17 seasons in and still winning Emmy Awards. 50+ international versions generating format licensing fees for Sony every single year. The show that every network rejected in 2009 is now one of the most valuable unscripted formats in television history. Shark Tank told you that anyone with a good idea and a good pitch could change their life. And while it was telling you that, it was collecting equity stakes, licensing fees, format deals, and ad revenue from one of the most engaged audiences in primetime television. The Sharks weren't just in the tank. The tank itself was the business. That's the rise. And rise and ruin will be here every time someone in that tank thinks the show is working for them and not the other way around.